Hello, everyone. Welcome to my second iteration of the Florida Ecology slideshows. This is an overview of the marsh, swamp, and mangrove ecosystems that we visited with the class recently. The first ecosystem we'll be going over is the marsh. This was at Orlando Wetlands Park, and it was a park with a lot of birds and a good bit of herps as well, especially snakes, which I love to see. The landscape of marshes are composed of low-lying, waterlogged terrain, soft, muddy, organic, rich soil. It is dominated by grasses, sedges, and cattails, and it has shallow, fluctuating water levels, which is shown pretty well by this image here. I love this image, not only because it shows the water level well, but because it has the two species of gallinule in the same picture. The straight-banded nursery web spider, Piscina brevipes, is the first animal I'll be going over. These spiders are known to build nursery tents and guard their young, which is pretty unique behavior for spiders and actually arthropods in general. They prefer swampy areas. I've actually encountered these guys a lot while doing my salamander research, and it is a species of concern in Canada, which is interesting for a spider. The American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis, adult males can get up to 4.5 meters in length. And I'm sad that we didn't get to see a big one in the wetlands park. And as a lot of you guys know, these animals have been historically imperiled due to overhunting and habitat loss, but they have since recovered under protection programs, and they are considered to be a conservation success story, with their numbers now reaching all-time highs well into the millions. The green heron, Booteroides versans, is small for a heron species. Some northern populations are migratory, while others reside year-round in warmer zones. And in Central America, these birds can actually hybridize with the striated heron. The turkey vulture, Cathartes aura, is the most widespread New World vulture. It ranges from southern Canada all the way through South America, which is an incredible range. As scavengers, they have incredibly strong stomachs, and if threatened, turkey vultures can actually regurgitate semi-digested meat at intruders, which, looking at their faces, I believe it. These are freaky little guys. The American anhinga is a scientific name. It is a monotypic species, and they hunt by swimming underwater and striking fish with their bill. And I actually captured that pretty well here in this image. This was a photo I got of one trying to get a fish that it scared off of its beak, which it was failing to do so quite spectacularly. Um, they actually nest in colonies, often with other water birds like herons and cormorants. Pretty unique. The great blue heron was undoubtedly my favorite bird that I saw at the Wetlands Park. It is Ardea heroides, and it is among the largest New World herons. There is actually an all-white morph of great blue heron, primarily found in South Florida and the Caribbean, which is pretty interesting. The purple gallinule was one of the prettier birds that we saw, Porphyro martinica. They consume a mix of plants and animal matter. They forage by walking across floating vegetation, as you can see by this photo, and they use their long toes to distribute their weight so that they don't sink. And I've doubled up on the plants here. The American white water lily, Nymphea odorata, also called the fragrant water lily. It is considered invasive, unfortunately, in the western United States, as it outcompetes many of the natives out there. The tie vine is a flowering vine in the morning glory family. It tends to occur in disturbed habitats like trails, fields, and woodland edges, so it's not surprising that we saw a ton of it in the trails at the wetland park. Climbing hemp vine, Miconia scandens, is a plant that reproduces via wind-dispersed seeds. Some studies note allelopathic effects of this plant, releasing compounds that inhibit germination or growth of neighboring plants, and that was pretty evident in the large patches of hemp vine that we saw. The water lettuce, Pistia astroides, is a monotypic species. It is floating, free surface, aquatic perennial that does not root in soil, and its native range is uncertain, although it is often considered to be pantropical. The lanceleaf arrowhead, Sagittaria lancifolia, is an obligate wetland species, as are a lot of these plants here. Birds and other fauna consume its fruits, and it's sometimes called the duck potato because the tubers have been historically used as food by humans. So a lot of edibility in this plant. Pickerel weed is the next plant, Pontidanera cordata. It is native to the Americas and inhabits wetlands from eastern Canada south to Argentina. So another huge range. The flowers are mostly violet to blue, but they are occasionally white, and they come out in these dense spikes over the foliage. This was definitely probably my favorite plant that we saw. Really, really cool flowers on it. And lastly, we have the red maple, Acer rubrum. It is most oftenly found in wetland habitats. It is one of the most hydrologically tolerant hardwoods in North America. And its ecological dominance can actually be a problem in some restoration or conservation contexts because it is very tolerant of many conditions, so it outcompetes a lot of species in both wetlands and upland habitats. Up next is the swamp. We went to Tosahatchee Wildlife Management Area and got very, very wet in this swamp, but really, really cool park. Swamps are composed of saturated soils with standing or slow moving water. It has organic, oxygen poor muck or peat soils, frequent seasonal flooding, and sometimes year-round inundation, although I'm pretty sure this area has seasonal flooding based off all the insects that we saw. Incredible how many insects were taking refuge in the palm fronds that were floating around. And the decomposing leaf litter creates that tannin-stained water that we were walking through. That I mean, you put your hand 2 inches into the water and you couldn't see it at all, and that's because of how much nutrients is in the water. The first animal we saw was the pygmy rattlesnake, Cistrurus miliarius. It is an endemic rattlesnake to the southeastern United States, and it is ecologically quite flexible. It's found in all sorts of habitats like swamps, hammocks, scrubs, and flatwoods. And when young, they often use a yellow-tailed tip called a caudal lure to attract prey like lizards and amphibians. I wasn't able to identify this flatworm past tribe, which is considered a failure on my end. But honestly, can you blame me? This thing is just very generic flatworm looking. I got it to tribe though. Rhynchodemini is as best as I can pronounce that. It is a very under-researched tribe, even in the United States. Members of it are terrestrial, often inhabiting moist, shaded environments. And some members are actually considered to be invasive in some parts of the world, although this was likely a native species. I've seen quite a few of species from Florida that look like that. They all look pretty dull with that one line coming down the center of their body. This wolf spider was of the genus Tigrosa. I wasn't able to identify it further than that, actually, because it's a fairly recent uh, genus. It was actually erected in 2012. Although wolf spiders generally are active hunters, they don't build webs to catch prey. They instead opt to hunt or ambush prey. The ornate harvestman, Libetoides ornata, is identifiable via a Y-shaped mark behind the ocular area, so very distinct marking there. It is endemic to the southeastern United States and are unfortunately quite understudied in terms of their ecology and biology. The southern flat coil snail is one of the species that I'm sure every single one of you saw in the swamp. It is endemic to Florida and Gulf Coast counties and other states. And unfortunately, it's been introduced to other areas via horticultural trade, including Hawaii. And it can reach very high densities. Reports suggest thousands of individuals per square meter in favorable patches. And I think we were in a favorable patch because these guys were absolutely everywhere, especially on the palm fronds. I found one at least in every single palm frond that we saw. The genus Cirripedon is a genus of mosses, and it has a cosmopolitan distribution except for Antarctica, with great diversity in the tropics. Rhacopleum cuspidigerum is the second moss that I have here in the slide. And the genus Raccopium is mainly known from the southern hemisphere, although this species has a more widespread distribution, and it is actually the only species of this genus that is found in Brevard County. That's how I was able to identify it to species. Lizard's tail is Saururus surnus. That's the best I can pronounce that. The name Saururus comes from the Greek saurus, which means tail, and that often refers to the drooping flower head shape, and it is native to the eastern side of North America. The giant leatherleaf fern is a huge frond, and its length can be upwards of 4 meters just in the frond, which is incredible. It is an obligate wetland species, and in Florida, the young emerging fronds are actually considered edible. So the frosty bonnet, Mycena tenerima, um, it decomposes deadwood, especially on bark and on small branches in moist forests. And this actually could be a different Mycena species. I couldn't tell because unfortunately these fruiting bodies were very recently emerged, but I'm very confident in the Mycena genus ID. The zoned hairy parachute, which is a crazy name for a fungus, um, Crinipellus zonata. It is native to the eastern United States, although it has been introduced to Portugal and South Korea, and its edibility is unknown, although it is thought to be quite poisonous. So don't go eating strange fungi. The water locust is one of the most notable or one of the most unique plants because of its most notable feature, which is the presence of these sharp thorns on the trunk and branches, especially on younger growth trees, although I'm pretty sure this tree was pretty old. And it is native to the southeast and it's most commonly found in Florida, although it's quite an uncommon species based on the iNaturalist distributions that I was looking at. The last ecosystem is the mangrove ecosystem in Pine Island Conservation Area. This was a heavily mangrove dominated environment, and mangrove estuary landscapes are composed of a network of tidal channels and mudflats that mix with salt and fresh water, which creates that brackish water that we were uh, stomping through. They're dominated by red, black, and white mangroves, and these mangroves are arranged along salinity gradients. Root structures stabilize sediment and trap organic matter, and that makes this ecosystem especially good at holding fish and invertebrate diversity. And this is a prime example of an invertebrate right here. This was Ramber's forktail, Ischura ramberi. It is a damselfly species. These are sexually dimorphic, as a lot of damselfly species are. Males are blue or green and black, while females are highly variable, often green, blue, orange, or gray. And I got this mating pair here, which I'm very happy with. This was a jumping spider that was only able to identify to genus. The genus is Phidippus. It is a genus of large, colorful spiders, and I'm unsure if it is Phidippus clarus or Phidippus regius, which is the regal jumper. Um, they show high visual acuity and learning ability, so they are often studied for cognition and behavior. Jumping spiders are actually considered to be the quote-unquote smartest arthropods in the world, and for that reason, they are commonly kept as pets because they are quite interesting to observe. The eastern pygmy blue is a salt marsh specialist butterfly. It's rarely seen outside of coastal ecosystems, and they are surprisingly weak flyers. They're often seen perching on low-lying vegetation because they can't get that high up, and they feed mainly on saltwort, which is this next plant species here. So the saltwort is Batis martinima. It is abundant in Florida's salt marshes and actively secretes salt through specialized glands in its leaves, and thus it forms this coating of salt crystals that you're able to slightly see on this photo, but they're very prevalent in person. Perennial glasswort is Salicornia ambiguata. That is widespread along tropical and subtropical coasts of the Americas, and it's also found in the Caribbean. And it's called glasswort because it historically was harvested for soda ash production, which is used in glass making. And these are both succulent species. That's why they're in the same slide. The Florida strangler fig was another cool plant that we found, Ficus aurea. It is an obligate mutualism with its specific fig wasp, which I'm not going to try to pronounce that because it's not required. It fruits year round, and these guys are a critical food source for animals during dry seasons. The white mangrove is this next plant, is the least saline tolerant of the main mangrove species, and it is identifiable by its opposite round-tipped leaves, as you can see in this image. The black mangrove, Abyssinia germanians, it ranges from Florida and the Gulf of Mexico through the Caribbean and down into northern South America, which is a very crazy range. Its leaves are opposite and narrow with pointed tips instead of that round that we were seeing with the white. Green buttonwood is often lumped in with mangroves. It's mangrove associated, but it's not a true mangrove. And it's pretty tall. It can grow up to 15 meters in length, and it has these alternating leaves that make it pretty identifiable, along with these really cool fruits. Lastly, we have cartilage lichen, Ramalina complantana. Um, It has a marked preference for humid, slightly saline air. That's why it's very often found on coastal mangrove ecosystems. And it is actually an excellent local indicator of clean coastal air. They disappear quite rapidly when pollution is present. And the reason is these lichen contain salicylic acid and eosinic acid, both of which are very sensitive to pollutants like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. And these are my citations. Thank you for watching.